It arrived without warning, sealed in the king's personal crest, delivered in silence, and addressed to Catherine alone. No one expected it, but inside was a message so personal, so shocking, it left the Princess of Wales in tears. What did Charles write in his final wish for the monarchy? And why did it break Catherine completely? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The envelope was unlike any other, hand-delivered under strict instruction, no aides allowed to preview its contents, no press release prepared in advance. It bore only the weight of the crown and the quiet power of the man who penned it. When Catherine opened it in the solitude of her private study at Kensington Palace, no one could have predicted the depth of emotional collapse that followed. According to palace insiders, within minutes of reading the letter, Catherine was seen exiting the room visibly shaken, her hands trembling and eyes reddened from tears. Her next royal engagement, a children's hospital visit she had been looking forward to, was suddenly and mysteriously cancelled. Rumours erupted almost instantly. Was it news of a terminal diagnosis for the king? A change in the line of succession? A final favour to Camila that undermined everything Catherine had been preparing for? The palace, as always, maintained its usual cold front, no comment on private correspondence. A senior spokesperson said, but that only poured fuel on the fire. Whispers swirled throughout the royal corridors. Some claimed the letter contained a coded transition plan that excluded Catherine from the queen consort role entirely. Others believed it named Camilla's lineage as a greater priority in future royal duties. One particularly chilling report suggested Charles had questioned Catherine's public image, stating it was too emotional, too dependent on sympathy, a line that cut deeper than any formal rebuke. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a moment of personal grief. This was the cracking open of a long-suppressed rift inside the monarchy's most guarded stronghold. Witnesses described the atmosphere in the palace as more emotional than anything since Queen Elizabeth's funeral. And at the centre of the storm was not a monarch or a successor, but a woman who had spent years holding the family, together with quiet grace, now forced to question everything. But to truly understand why these words devastated Catherine, we must first unravel the quiet war being waged behind palace walls. For years, the world believed Charles and William were united in vision. But beneath the smiles, father and son drifted apart, divided by ambition, loyalty, and the future of the crown. And Charles's final wish may have been the ultimate betrayal. The fracture didn't appear overnight. It was slow, measured, veiled in public unity and private divergence. While Charles championed environmental reform and the streamlining of the monarchy, William had grown into a different kind of leader. He was the modern heir, balancing military valor with humanitarian diplomacy. But this contrast, subtle at first, soon became a wedge. Tensions deepened after Queen Elizabeth's death when Charles ascended the throne with a fragile mandate. He was no longer the waiting prince, but a king with an uncertain legacy. And in that fragile ascent, isolation began to set in. Those who had once advised the Queen were quietly replaced by Camilla's confidantes. The corridors William and Catherine once moved through freely were slowly narrowed. Private meetings about royal succession and structural changes were held without their input. Aides close to William began to notice his growing frustration, his sense that his father's vision no longer included him in the way it once had. The divide became undeniable when Charles started spending more time with Camilla's children, inviting them into strategic briefings, granting access once reserved only for blood heirs. It wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. Behind palace doors, whispers turned into warnings. The king was redefining the line of trust, and William was no longer at the centre. Then came the confrontation. Weeks before the letter arrived at Kensington, a private meeting between Charles and William ended in reported silence. A source close to the family described the exchange as cordial but final, a last-ditch effort by William to reaffirm his place and Charles's apparent unwillingness to give clarity. It was then, some believe, that the letter was conceived, not as a farewell, but as a reckoning. And when it finally arrived without William's knowledge or prior consent, The betrayal was not just emotional. It was strategic. Speculation quickly erupted that the letter had been intentionally withheld from the direct heir, bypassing him entirely in favor of a private delivery to Catherine. If true, the implications were staggering. It meant Charles chose to deliver his most personal vision for the monarchy, not to the one who would inherit it, but to the one he believed might change its course. The letter was no longer just a message. It was a weapon. And the silence that followed from William's camp only deepened the unease. But this wasn't just about William, it was about the woman beside him and what her role would become in a monarchy Charles may never have fully trusted. She has been called the monarchy's last great hope. But behind the serene smile and public grace, Catherine has carried years of quiet pressure, palace politics, and unspoken sacrifices. And now, Charles's letter may have shattered the image of the future she believed in. From the moment she stepped into royal life, Catherine was never afforded the luxury of trial and error. Every gesture, every expression, every silence was dissected by the public, weighed by the media, and quietly judged by the very institution she had pledged herself to uphold. She endured it all without scandal, without defiance, always the picture of poise. But that very image, carefully cultivated over years of duty, has long concealed a battlefield. Within the palace walls, Catherine was far from universally embraced. Camilla's influence grew quietly but forcefully following Queen Elizabeth's death, and many of her trusted staff were quick to dismiss Catherine's appeal as a matter of optics, not substance. There were whispers that Catherine was more photogenic than strategic, that her elegance masked inexperience, that her growing popularity was a liability, not an asset. These weren't public attacks, they were private sabotages. Long before the letter arrived, there had been signs Catherine was being edged out of pivotal discussions. Sources close to the palace revealed she was deliberately excluded from key meetings regarding the royal future. Succession discussions, especially those initiated in the wake of Elizabeth's passing, were held in private circles that often did not include her or even William. It was as though a wall had quietly been built between her and the power structure she had loyally supported. That exclusion, though unspoken, became deeply personal as Catherine faced her own battles coping with her father-in-law's health issues, maintaining her young family's emotional well-being, and navigating her own health struggles in silence. The pressure mounted, but she never buckled publicly. Not until that letter. According to a highly placed insider, the letter questioned whether Catherine's public persona was sustainable in a modern monarchy. The words, reportedly chosen with care, cast doubt on the very essence of what Catherine represented. Her warmth, her maternal strength, her natural ability to connect with the public qualities that had once been celebrated were now being positioned as weaknesses in a time when the monarchy was being urged to evolve. But the most crushing revelation? That Charles may have envisioned a different path for the crown, one that placed less emphasis on emotional appeal and more on what he allegedly described as institutional resilience. In those few cold lines, Catherine was not just sidelined, she was diminished. The woman who had held the monarchy together through scandal, transition, and public upheaval was suddenly being questioned at its highest level. And for Catherine, who had given so much for so little in return, it wasn't just heartbreaking, it was humiliating. As Catherine wept behind palace walls, a much darker truth began to surface. Charles's final wish may not have been a vision for unity, but a parting shot in a fractured dynasty. Leaked by someone close to the crown, the contents of Charles's final letter are nothing short of devastating. From who he trusts to lead, to what he fears most for the future, the words written in ink may reshape the monarchy forever. It didn't come through official channels. It didn't need to. A foreign royal correspondent, one with long-standing access to the fringes of the Windsor Circle, published a series of bombshell excerpts that left even the most seasoned royal commentators stunned. In them, Charles made no effort to veil his preferences. He praised Camilla's loyalty with emphatic clarity, calling her the cornerstone of continuity and urging that her visibility within the institution remain prominent, regardless of who occupied the throne. But what caused true disbelief, what left even hardened royalists speechless, was the glaring omission. Nowhere in the letter was Catherine mentioned as queen consort, not as future queen, not even as a symbol of the next generation. Instead, Charles spoke of the monarchy's need to evolve beyond emotional dependency on titles, an eerie phrase that many interpreted as a veiled critique of Catherine's public appeal. It was as if the woman who had become the royal family's stabilizing force, beloved for her empathy and presence, had been erased with the stroke of a pen. The letter also hinted at something far more radical, a future where the monarchy would be condensed to a minimalist structure. Charles suggested that future generations should consider reducing the working royal roster to only include the most unifying and undiluted branches, specifically naming Princess Anne and, shockingly, Camilla's descendants. No mention of William, no reference to his children. Not even Prince George, the heir-in-waiting, found space in this apparent blueprint for the future. Behind palace doors, the reaction was nothing short of explosive. William, described by insiders as visibly shaking, confronted senior courtiers demanding answers. For a man raised to lead, to inherit, and to uphold tradition, this was betrayal not just of protocol but of blood. Catherine, already reeling from receiving the letter firsthand, was now facing the echo of that humiliation being played out on the global stage. The public had questions, but the palace refused to provide answers. And yet, the silence only confirmed what many suspected: the leak was real, the contents deliberate. The king's words were not the product of confusion or illness. They were intentional, chillingly clear. A declaration of vision that cast shadows long before his reign could leave light. But it wasn't just what Charles said, it was what he left unsaid that sparked a storm that would split the family even further apart. While Catherine wept, Camilla watched and remained silent, but insiders say her silence was anything but innocent. For months, she'd been preparing for this moment, quietly reshaping the monarchy in her image while Charles gave her more power than ever before. It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't require confrontation. Camilla played a long game, strategic, deliberate, and devastatingly effective. After Queen Elizabeth's death, the Queen Consort wasted no time surrounding herself with trusted confidantes. Many of the Queen's old advisors, those who had quietly protected Catherine's standing and supported William's rise, were either removed or sidelined. Their replacements? Hand-picked loyalists with a singular allegiance. Camilla's agenda. And that agenda quickly took shape. Royal engagements that once centered Catherine were quietly shifted. Press briefings emphasized Camilla's presence. Events were restructured, photo placements reconsidered, and media narratives recalibrated to spotlight the woman once considered an outsider. It was subtle but relentless rebranding royalty under Camilla's reign, not in name, but in influence. Behind the scenes, whispers turned into warnings. Charles, increasingly dependent on Camilla both emotionally and politically, began leaning on her sons for counsel. Invitations to sensitive palace meetings, once exclusive to blood heirs, now extended to Tom and Laura, an unprecedented move that sent shockwaves through royal protocol. William reportedly objected. His concerns, insiders say, were dismissed. The king's trust, it seemed, had shifted. Then came the most chilling revelation. Leaked internal memos suggested Camilla was aware of Charles's final letter to Catherine before it was even delivered. One aide claimed she had advised Charles on its tone. Another said she'd instructed her staff to prepare for a change in narrative days before the envelope reached Kensington. And when the letter went public, Catherine's heartbreak was met not with warmth, but a cold, measured silence from Camilla, one that felt, to many in the royal household, less like shock and more like satisfaction. Catherine, still reeling from the contents, reportedly felt ambushed. Set up, one source quoted her as saying. It was as if the rug had been pulled from under her feet while Camilla stood firmly on polished marble. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a political triumph. Camilla had done what few believed possible, outmaneuvered the very woman the nation saw as the future queen. And she had done it without raising her voice, without making a scene. Power, in Camilla's hands, didn't need spectacle. It thrived in silence, And while Camilla cemented her place in the future, the public saw something entirely different, an outpouring of grief, loyalty, and fury from those who saw Catherine as the people's queen. The public doesn't forgive easily, and they do not forget. As details of the letter spread, so did outrage. Thousands took to social media, vowing allegiance not to the crown, but to Catherine herself. The Princess of Wales had gone from royal figure to living symbol of dignity under fire. Within hours, the digital world erupted in a unified chorus of fury and loyalty. Hashtags like number Queen Catherine now and number not my monarchy dominated global trends, not just in Britain but across Europe, North America, and the Commonwealth. Royal watchers and casual observers alike were stunned not just by the contents of the letter, but by the sheer disregard for a woman who had served the institution with unflinching grace. From morning talk shows to late-night broadcasts, Catherine's name was everywhere, and for the first time in decades, the monarchy faced a popularity war it could not spin, silence, or suppress. Prominent celebrities issued statements of support, calling her the embodiment of modern royalty. A respected humanitarian organization posted a photo of Catherine at one of their events with the caption, "This is who we stand behind." Even world leaders, usually cautious in commenting on internal royal affairs, began making veiled remarks about leadership that inspires through humility. Then came the letters. Open declarations from former palace staff, respected military figures, and royal historians who had once held their tongues but now felt compelled to speak. They described Catherine as a stabilizing force, an irreplaceable bridge between the crown and the people, and the only royal who truly understands service. But the moment that truly shattered the illusion of control came with a single video. Filmed discreetly, as Catherine left a private chapel, she was seen wiping away a tear, turning quickly to avoid being seen. The footage was barely 30 seconds long, but it exploded across platforms. That image, unscripted, raw, profoundly human, became the heart of the movement. Millions reposted it, artists painted it, commentators declared it the moment the royal family lost its moral compass. And the response from the palace? Panic disguised as poise. A high-profile event led by Camila was suddenly postponed without reason. Behind the scenes, it was chaos. Staff feared a spiraling crisis. Advisors warned of a popularity split even more dangerous than the one sparked by Harry and Meghan's exit. Because this time, the divide wasn't over protocol or press, it was about character, and the people had chosen. Catherine had not spoken a single public word since the letter, and yet she had already won a different kind of crown, the loyalty of a nation disillusioned with titles, but still yearning for truth. But as the outside world rallied to her side, Catherine was already preparing for the next storm, one that would put her face to face with the institution that tried to silence her. Catherine was never expected to return, and yet, just days after the letter surfaced, she arrived at Sandringham alone, unannounced, and determined to confront the legacy Charles had left behind. What happened behind those closed doors may have changed everything. The royal estate, still echoing with the weight of Queen Elizabeth's memory, became the setting for a conversation long overdue. Inside, waiting for her, were the two people she knew would listen without judgment, Princess Anne and Prince Edward. It wasn't a formal meeting. There were no titles, no protocol, no staff. What followed was described by an insider as raw and unprecedented. Catherine, exhausted from the public storm, laid bare her heartbreak and confusion. She didn't come for sympathy, she came for truth. She asked the question no one had dared to answer directly. What were the legal implications of Charles's letter? Was it merely personal sentiment, or a premeditated directive meant to shape the future of the monarchy without her? The gravity of her words was not lost on Anne, whose relationship with Catherine had grown stronger since the Queen's passing. Rather than brushing her off with ceremonial pleasantries, Anne called for something unexpected, a royal archivist. The decision to summon the Crown's record keeper meant only one thing. Formal documentation was at stake. If the letter was filed, logged, or linked to any succession papers, its impact could extend far beyond emotion. It could alter precedent. That revelation hung in the air like a thundercloud. And then came the line, quiet, pointed, and spoken only to Catherine. Anne looked her in the eye and said, "He underestimated you." That sentence, delivered by the monarchy's most stoic figure, landed with more force than any declaration of support ever could. It was an acknowledgement that Catherine wasn't just collateral in Charles's fading legacy, she was a force he failed to reckon with. In that moment, the tides shifted. Edward, long regarded as the quiet diplomat of the family, nodded in agreement. There was no vote, no uprising, but the energy in the room was unmistakable. Not everyone supported Charles's final vision. Cracks had formed beneath the surface, and now they were beginning to show. The implications were enormous. If Anne and Edward, the most loyal of the late Queen's children, stood with Catherine, the conversation had already evolved from consolation to calculation. A new alliance was taking shape, one that didn't rely on public sentiment but on internal resistance to a monarch's final decree. But even with allies emerging, Catherine would have to make the most difficult decision of all, whether to fight for her place or walk away with her dignity intact. Every queen faces a reckoning, but Catherine's came sooner than expected. With her name absent from Charles's wishes and the crown's loyalty fractured, she was left with two paths: rise in defiance or retreat in silence. What she chose stunned even her closest confidantes. Just days after her private visit to Sandringham, the palace communications team received word of a statement. But it wasn't coming through official royal channels. Catherine had penned it herself, bypassing the traditional approval system. It was brief, just under 400 words, but it shook the monarchy's foundation to its core. There were no titles, no mention of Charles, no reference to Camilla, not even the word monarchy appeared. But within the lines was a message so deliberate, so unmistakably powerful, that it left the entire nation holding its breath. She opened with gratitude, thanking the public for their overwhelming kindness, their support, and their refusal to turn away from quiet injustice. She acknowledged the pain of recent events, referring only to a moment of private betrayal that had become painfully public. Her words were calm, controlled, but underneath them pulsed something far deeper: conviction. Then came the line that changed everything. "I will continue to serve not where I'm instructed, but where I am needed. Not within the confines of ceremony, but in the real lives of the people who look to this family for steadiness in storm." It was a declaration, a break from protocol, a rejection of passivity. Without once naming the source of her pain, Catherine claimed something greater than a title. She claimed her own path. In the final paragraph, she addressed the future not as a Princess of Wales, but as a mother, a partner, and a woman who refused to be dismissed. And then, in a moment that seemed almost cinematic in timing, William stood beside her as she delivered the statement in person. Just before they turned to leave, he looked into the crowd and said the words that instantly echoed across the globe. "She is my queen in every way that matters." It wasn't just support, it was validation. It was the heir to the throne affirming that legacy is not written in ink, but in character. The reaction was immediate. Global media praised her restraint. Citizens cried in the streets. Even members of parliament reportedly discussed her address behind closed doors, calling it the most unifying moment the monarchy has had in a decade. What Catherine did that day was more than respond. She reframed the question. She reminded the world that strength isn't always loud, and that sometimes the most powerful crown is the one not yet placed upon your head. And just when the dust began to settle, a royal event unlike any in recent memory reignited speculation that Catherine's destiny is far from over. They tried to write her out of the story, but in a twist no one saw coming, the monarchy turned its gaze back toward the woman it tried to sideline. At a major royal ceremony, Catherine stepped forward, and the world stood still. Just weeks after whispers of betrayal and a nation reeling from King Charles's final letter, Catherine appeared alone at the Remembrance Day service in Whitehall, not flanked by senior royals, not hidden in the shadows, but front and centre, leading with poise, composure, and a quiet authority that shook the very foundations of the royal order. The moment wasn't planned, or so they said, but insiders have since revealed that the decision was strategic. Camila was absent. No official reason was given. And while speculation ran wild, the headlines made one thing clear. The people weren't asking where Camila was, they were watching Catherine. The crowd, once restrained by grief and uncertainty, erupted in applause. Veterans saluted her with unspoken reverence. Foreign leaders shared clips of the ceremony, citing her as a symbol of modern resilience. The very institution that had tried to minimize her was now watching her become something they could no longer deny: essential. And then, the unthinkable reports began to surface that King Charles's so-called final wish was under formal review. Legal experts cited inconsistencies. Clergy members questioned its spiritual legitimacy, and one voice, in particular, pierced the silence. A senior bishop, deeply respected across all factions of the Church of England, publicly stated that Catherine should be officially reaffirmed in her position not just as Princess of Wales, but as the rightful future Queen. It was not an endorsement. It was a warning. The monarchy, if it failed to acknowledge her, risked a collapse in moral authority. And behind palace doors, the tide continued to shift. A new advisory council, long rumoured but never confirmed, began to take shape. Not only was Catherine reportedly involved, she was rumoured to be leading it. Composed of younger royals, military figures, and humanitarian voices, this new circle signalled a subtle but decisive pivot toward modern leadership, and Catherine was at the centre. As cameras captured her final moments at the remembrance ceremony, standing in solitary grace beneath the grey London sky, it was clear that something fundamental had changed. She had walked through betrayal, survived the storm, and emerged with her dignity untouched. She had been tested not by ceremony, but by character, and she had proven without a crown, without a title shift, and without vengeance that true royalty isn't born, it's forged. And the monarchy, fractured and searching, had no choice but to look again. From private heartbreak to public triumph, Catherine has shown the world that true royalty isn't inherited, it's earned in the fire of betrayal, the weight of silence, and the strength to keep standing when everything falls apart. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.